Alright. If I sound tired, it's because I am. It's about 3 o'clock in the morning now. I wanted to knock one more out before I went to bed. So we have Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the remake from 2003, and... Just a minute. Let's talk about this movie. So this was the first Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie I ever saw. I think in 04 or 05, whenever it came out. And this was the first big remake. I mean, there were others. They remade Night of the Living Dead, Psycho, stuff like that. But this was the first big one. First remake of a big franchise to be followed by Dawn of the Dead, Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, and a bunch of other ones that would all be, remade. This was directed by Marcus Nisbell, who would go on to do the Friday the 13th remake, which is another good remake, I think. You know the story. 4 friends are driving down the back roads of Texas when they encounter a crazed family and a killer who wears the skin on his face, his other face. So, that's the story, and they're sticking to it. And this came at an age of horror that was really starting to get, I call it grimy horror. Like, horror movies that had a very grimy, dirty, gritty look to it, like this, and See No Evil, and Saw, and even to an extent, Hostel, which I've already said I'm probably never going to review because those movies are too much for me, but this came at a time where everything was just getting grimy and gross in horror movies, This and See No Evil and Saw come to mind. And then grimy. You have this dilapidated house. You have this big looking house on the outside, looks good. Inside, it's all grimy and dirty and body parts and stuff like that. Same thing with, you have See No Evil. You have this hotel, a dilapidated hotel, flies and eyeballs in jars and stuff like that. And then, there's another one, Saw. They're in a nasty-ass bathroom. I mean, this came at a time when there was oversaturation of nasty, grimy horror movies, and this, I believe, was the start of it. The cast in this film is actually pretty good. We have Jessica Biel of Seventh Heaven, and now married to Justin Timberlake. Eric Balfour, who was originally in Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Joss Whedon wanted him to be a main cast member, credited as a main cast member in the first episode, so that when he killed him off, he would be a surprise to the people. But apparently they couldn't afford it, I guess. I don't know. Erica Learson, who was in the Blair Witch 2, which I saw around the same time, so it was kind of cool. And then after this, I would watch her in Wrong Turn 2, so, she's a little scream queen there. Jonathan Tucker, who I haven't really seen in anything, but he's pretty good in this. Mike Vogel, who I know from, he plays Andy in this. I know him from Cloverfield, and She's Out of Your League. Yes. A movie I want to do one of these days. Pig 10 comedy is coming, folks. It's going to be a little while. And of course, how can we forget the kid from The Ring plays little Jedediah, and of course Leatherface is played by Andrew Bynarski, Mr. Quick, change the channel from Street Fighter himself, and he's a great Leatherface. I think he's the only one that rivals Gunnar Hansen to me. They're right there for me. Any other cast members of note? Can't really. Oh yeah, R. Lee freaking Ermey. He is the best thing in this film. He makes this movie. You could say you had your stand-up characters in the original, like Nubbins, and even to a point Drayton, but even Drayton doesn't come out of his shell until the second film. So Nubbins was really the only one you had, besides Leatherface, that really jumped out. Here, you have Sheriff Hoyt, and he is fantastic. In this film, they changed it from Sawyer to Hewitt. I hear a lot of questions saying why they do that. It's a remake. You can change it a little bit, right? So our 4 people are on their way back on their way to a Skinner concert. I think they're on their way back from Mexico, where they picked up a pinata full of weed, and they're so afraid that someone's, like, when they had to call the sheriff, like, oh, he's gonna find a pinata full of weed. Wasn't there a border check? I know it's 1973, but wasn't there still border checks back then? Or was it really that easy to cross the border between Mexico and Texas? I don't know. They pick up a hitchhiker, which is customary in these movies. But it turns out that this isn't one of the bad guys. This is a hostage who had escaped. And when she realizes they start driving back, she freaks out and tells them to stop. They pull over, and she pulls a gun out of her cooch and shoots herself in, which is a beautiful shot. It's really done practically. All the effects in this is done practically. And I'm all for that, but they did the thing. They used the air gun, and they blew the big thing out the back of her head. And then they do a dolly shot through the prosthetic out the back, which they had to do quite a few times. And just, it's fantastic. Best kill in the film, for my thought of it. But, in my opinion, I should say. But, yeah, so she'd rather die than go back there. So this is where the big, like, one of my biggest gripes with this movie is they could have just left. All they need to do is toss her body on the side of the road, clean up everything, drive to a gas station, clean it up, fix the windshield, maybe if someone stopped them, say there's a crazy guy with a gun shooting at them, they don't know, you never know. They could have just kept going. But Aaron's like, no, we gotta call the cops, we gotta do something, we gotta call the cops, and we can't just leave her there. And when Kemper, which is the way we'll do this name, tries to, reason with her, she gives her that girlfriend look like. Gives him that girlfriend look like. And so he's like, okay, we'll find the sheriff. And it's like, bitch. And I hope she realizes by the end of this film, all the people that die, her fault for making them find the sheriff. Her fault. That's the biggest gripe I have, is that if she wasn't being such a nagging female stereotype, they'd be gone. They'd be safe. But no. So I should mention, the beginning of this starts with John Larroquette reprising his role as the narrator. And we get it's supposed to be real footage. A policeman coming down, and he says he's in a Hewitt residence, and he says that it's down the road from where they found the first victim's body? Or is it the house where they found the first victim's body? Who's the first victim? It's not the hitchhiker, because he wraps her up and puts her down in the basement. It's not Kemper, because Kemper is also in the basement. Can't be Andy. Is it Pepper? Her body was left outside. Was it her body? In that case, she wouldn't be the first victim. I'm not exactly sure who first victim is here, because Kemper is the first victim that we know of, at least of the Hewitts in this situation. She kills herself, but she's not a victim of the Hewitts, at least not physically. Mentally, maybe, but... So Kemper is the first victim of the Hewitts, of Leatherface, I should say. But he's chopped up in the basement, and his skin is filleted, and Leatherface wears it on his face for one time. So that can't be who they're talking about. Andy is also disposed of in the basement. Very stupidly, we'll get to that. Only thing I can think of is, it can't be Morgan either, because he's also in the basement. Or no, he gets out, but he's chopped in half, still in the house. Pepper's the only one that's killed outside, I think. Isn't she? I think. There's only one that I can think of. So maybe it's just the first victim they found. I don't know. So, alright, so they find a little boy named Jedediah who they call the police and they say that the sheriff's to the old mill. They get there, he's not there. He says that they'll meet him there, whatever. Jedediah, the little boy named Jedediah, named the little boy Jedediah. That's Leatherface's real name in the original film, but here it's just a little boy. He says the sheriff is at his house, so he leads them to their house where Jessica Biel, I forget her name, and Kemper, they go there, they leave the other two behind, and they meet Monty, an amputee with no legs, who tells them it's not the sheriff's house, but they call the police. They get to call the police, and they say again, go to the old mill, So Monty has a hard time getting to the bathtub, gives him a time to play some grab ass with Jessica Biel, and then Kemper is taken out by Leatherface in the iconic reshot of, like, I think it's Paul from the first one. I keep thinking that's his name. Is that not his name? I don't know. But he gets, the hammer to the head taken in. I'd say it's an homage, and it's done pretty well. But Erin, that's her name. She gets out of there. She's calling for Kemper. She can't find him. It's such a weird name. Kemper. She goes back to the mill to see if Kemper's there. He's not. So she takes Andy back to the house with her. So Andy, like a fucking dumbass, sneaks in through the back, or the side, whatever, while she distracts Monty. And while he's in there, also like a fucking dumbass, he knocks over some stuff. But here's the thing. Again, I put this on her. If she didn't react the way she did, Monty wouldn't have noticed. I'm pretty sure. You would have just thought it was Leatherface fucking around in there. And she goes running into the house screaming Andy, thinking he's in trouble. And then he's all pissed off and starts yelling for Leatherface. That's what he's doing. He's like, come on, boy. Come on. Do it, boy. Come on. And then Leatherface shows up and attacks them. And we get this chase scene through the sheets. Yeah, eventually Leatherface is able to subdue Andy. I think he cuts his leg off and then hangs him on the hook. Meanwhile, the sheriff shows up just as Erin's getting back. Well, the sheriff shows up while she's gone, and he wraps the hitchhiker in saran wrap and takes her away. Erin comes back at night. Somehow it's night now. And the van conveniently can't start. How convenient. Sheriff shows up and sees they get rid of the pinata of weed, but they left the doobies, the joints in the front. So he finds it, and the sheriff finds it and goes off on him. And he then blames Morgan for the death of the hitchhiker, saying that Morgan shot her. And I really don't, like, he gets very antagonistic to the point where Morgan has had enough, and, you know, he's got the sheriff's gun. He points the sheriff's gun at him and fires it, but it's not loaded. And he's like, congratulations, you just killed a cop. I'm like, no, he didn't. And even if it did, even if it was loaded and it shot you, it's still not his fault entirely. He has 2 witnesses who saw you goading him into doing it, antagonizing him to the point where he had no choice to do it. So, really, he's the only police force in this area, and we find out why in the prequel, apparently, from what I hear. I've heard things. But because of this, the sheriff takes Morgan and puts him in his cop car, smashes a whiskey bottle on his face, which apparently knocks out some teeth. I don't think that's how bottles work, but okay. And he's like, look at that. We're Matt. Takes out his fake teeth. CGI not so good on his mouth, but it's okay. So Aaron and Pepper are left, and they're attacked by Leatherface. And I can't remember for the life of me what happens with Pepper, but she dies here, I believe. And then Aaron makes her way back to the house. So this is where she finds Andy still hanging, and she tries to get him off the hook, but she's not strong enough, and he goes back on the hook, which makes it worse. And then he says to, you know, end his pain and just get over with, so she stabs him in the gut. I don't know. Just aim for his heart, woman. I don't. And then she finds Morgan in a bathtub, and they try to get out of there, but Leatherface shows up and cuts Morgan in half. He cut him in half. She then runs into Henrietta and the tea lady, who are also Hewitts, and they have a baby. The baby is connected to the hitchhiker from the beginning, so she sets out to save this baby, which she eventually does. Apparently, Sheriff Hoyt thinks it's all over because he's just relaxing with the rest of the family when a distraction happens and she's able to take the baby. And we get this cool, it's one of those shots where you think one thing is happening, but really it's another. Where you see Sheriff Hoyt coming up to the bed of not the bed, what do you call that? The bucket, no. What is it? In a big rig truck. Open it, stuff like that. He opens it, but it turns out she's actually in his car, and she runs him the fuck over. Leatherface does get his arm hacked off. I forgot to mention that earlier. I think Morgan does it, or maybe she does it. But he gets his arm hacked off. Sheriff Hoyt is dead, and she drives off with the baby to safety, and we cut back to the real footage early on in the film. And, yeah, so apparently, the police officer and the guy, whoever's recording is attacked by Leatherface, Thomas Hewitt, as he's called in this. And, how did they get the footage? They would have to have sent someone to that house, and I just don't get how they found the footage. It would be nice if we actually got a sequel to this, which would explain that, but we don't. We get a prequel. Y'all know how I feel about prequels. They are unnecessary and just fill in the gaps of stuff we didn't ask to be filled in. But this film, I think, is actually pretty good. I like the practical effects very much. I actually like most of the characters, even though their motivations, you know. I like Erin, but she is frustrating because couple decisions, if she went the other way with you know, she twice had a chance to just leave. Because Kemper wanted to leave, just take off. That could have saved them, but no. And then she goes back to them, and they're just like, maybe we should just leave Kemper here. I don't want to be my boyfriend. And once again, because of that decision, everybody else gets killed but her. She saves a baby, though. All her friends are dead, though. I don't think she'll be making that Skinner concert. But, yeah. Still, I would say, when it comes to Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake, it's pretty good. Alright. Here we go. 3 left. Right? We got the prequel, the requel, and the other prequel to the requel. But, so what's your thoughts on a Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake? Let me know in the comments below. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Thanks for watching. I've been Scotty, and I'll see you in the next one.